Estejaronde tonue Jesus atonhia.
When St. Ignatius of Loyola founded the Society of Jesus in 1540, he sought out to reclaim souls lost by the Reformation and those who were still in ignorance from pagan lands. Within decades, the Jesuits were traveling to every corner of the globe, including the vast, uncharted territories of North America. From the forests of Canada to the deserts of the Southwest, Jesuit missionaries sacrificed much to bring the light of faith to the natives, often living alongside them, learning their languages, and in some cases, winning the crown of martyrdom. One of the greatest and more unknown of these missionaries was Father Pierre-Jean de Smet, a Belgian Jesuit whose life, full of long journeys, peaceful negotiations, and a burning love for God and souls, would convert tens of thousands of natives. Pierre-Jean de Smet was born in 1801 in Dendermonde, Belgium. From a young age, he felt drawn to the priesthood, and as he grew older, he generously responded to God's call, where he entered seminary. And during his formation, a priest and a fellow Belgian would visit the seminary, seeking out missionaries to join him in the New World. His vivid pictures of the untamed lands and fervent appeal moved the young seminarian, and at age 19, Pierre de Smet volunteered and left for America with a group of fellow Jesuits, first settling in Maryland and then transferring to St. Louis, Missouri, where in 1827 he was ordained a priest. While Father de Smet was living in St. Louis as a newly ordained priest, several delegations of the Flathead Indians traveled hundreds of miles from what is now Montana to St. Louis, Missouri. They had heard of the Black Robes, holy men who taught about the one true God, and they wanted the faith for their people. Father de Smet responded without hesitation. In 1840, he set out on a 2,000-mile journey west. What he found amazed him. The Flathead Indian people had already begun living Christian lives as best as they could, praying with rosaries and even observing the Sabbath, despite never having seen a priest. The Flatheads, having previous knowledge about the Catholic faith, was a result of native peoples, such as the Iroquois, who were continuously being relocated westward by the U.S. government and who would go on to share their Catholic faith with the tribes they would assimilate with. This delighted Father de Smet, with him remarking, "Their desire for religion is incredible. I have seen nothing like it. They asked for baptism, and they listened to instruction with joy and humility." Over the next decades, Father de Smet would travel over 180,000 miles, often on foot, horseback, or canoe. He became known as the Apostle of the Rockies, and more than that, a trusted friend and peacemaker among native tribes. He baptized an estimated 30,000 natives, including members of the Flathead, Blackfeet, Lakota, and many others. He toiled during his whole life to bring these natives the sacraments, from which all graces flow. He tended to these missions with the greatest spirit of self-sacrifice and devotion, and Providence frequently kept him away from death, as he writes to the Reverend Father Helias in 1851, "Whilst traveling in the plains and mountains, kind Providence has watched over me. I escaped from a dangerous illness, from the attacks of wild beasts and enemies, from the smallpox and cholera. I passed through a camp where people were dying and rotting, alive, unhurt, and untouched. I slept among the dying and dead for over a month, handling and attending on the cholera patients, and returned safe and sound. I had the happiness to place the holy waters of baptism on the foreheads of 1,586 children and adults. of whom many have since fallen victims of the two mentioned diseases, and are now forever happy. In 1851 and again in 1868, the U.S. government asked him to help negotiate peace with the Lakota. Even warriors like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse listened to him. They trusted him because these native people looked in admiration at the many virtues which these missionaries possessed, especially their poverty. And for context, during this time, westward settlers who were encouraged and sometimes even sponsored by the U.S. government were massacring the bison, which was the equivalent of their livestock, and violating treaties to move settlers in and acquire resources in their agreed-upon territories. "The Indian is naturally religious," he once wrote, "and if he is instructed and baptized while still young, he becomes a fervent Christian." Father de Smet loved these people, not in a distant, abstract way, but with the true heart of Christ. He saw in every tribe, every child, a soul for whom Christ died. As the years wore on, Father de Smet's health declined, but his zeal never did. He spent the final years writing, raising funds for the missions, and praying fervently for the native peoples he had come to love his family. In the funeral oration on Father de Smet by Archbishop Patrick Ryan of St. Louis, he recounts in the final days of Father de Smet's life his unrelenting tenderness and love towards the natives. As he laid in agony on his bed, he uttered so many times, "Oh, how I should like to pass my life and end it among our dear Indians." When he felt his end at hand, one of the greatest consolations was to think of the many little children who he had regenerated in the holy waters of baptism, and whose prayers would at the supreme moment be of such great aid to him. He had also the greatest trust in the merits of the adults who had persevered in their faith, and who would be praying for him also. Archbishop Ryan also writes, "When I saw Father de Smet last, on Wednesday, the 21st of May, 2 days before his death, I found him full of courage and hope. He said to me, 'I have served the good God for many years, and I am going to come before him pretty soon, and my heart is very full of confidence and real consolation. I have the greatest hope,' he said further, 'in the efficacy of the prayers of all those whom the Lord has sent me in times past. I count especially on the merits of Jesus Christ, poor sinner that I am, and I love to think that the Lord will have pity on me in the hour of my agony." Father Pierre-Jean de Smet died on May 23, 1873, in St. Louis, Missouri. His funeral drew crowds from all over, a testament to the lives he had touched. Father Pierre-Jean de Smet, although widely criticized, with public images of him being removed and defaced on account of his missionary work being perceived as colonial or part of the U.S. government's efforts to undermine the native populations, cannot be further from the truth. As continually shown throughout his life, from his entrance into seminary to the tender last words he spoke on his deathbed in St. Louis, Father de Smet loved the Indian as no missionary ever had before, and devoted his life to their salvation. All for the greater glory of God and the salvation of souls. This is our purpose. This is our joy.